Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat. My name is Jose Otero, and this is IGN's Nintendo Show. Joining me this week are CJ Gibson.
What's up?
Zach Ryan.
Brap.
That's right, you're playing the role of Brian, and Alanah Pearce.
Great.
So Brian and Pear are out this week, but coming up on Nintendo Voice Chat, we've got a lot of things to talk about. First, we're going to give you our final sort of verdict on the Nintendo Switch presentation, the events of last week. Then we're going to follow that up by telling you our impressions of actually playing Nintendo Switch. CJ and I had hands-on. Then after that, we've got a few other topics, including a Fire Emblem roundup, so stick around for that. Let's kick things off with our thoughts, our final thoughts. We've had some distance on the Nintendo Switch presentation and last week's Switchopolis. Wait, what did I call it in the office?
Switchocalypse.
Yeah, Switchpocalypse. Yeah,
Coming.
Snap.
Coming.
What'd you guys think?
I thought it was pretty concise. I think that they gave us a lot of information in a short amount of time and showed us a ton of games, almost an exhaustive amount. But I feel like it was a very well-organized conference, and I knew what I was getting for the most part. There were a lot of questions raised, though. As soon as they started talking about online infrastructure, I was like, okay, you're telling me that I have to pay for it, but you're not telling me what I have to pay for, which seems insane to give us the negative and not the positive. So
yeah, every detail about online was a negative or could be interpreted as a negative.
Yeah.
You were just there, like if you were the Nintendo fan trying to control your emotions of like, when does this go awry? You were starting to twitch at the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah.
You just felt
I'm sorry, I misheard.
it was it's a really odd way to sell that, but I was most impressed by the Joy-Cons. I really didn't expect those to be what they are. I didn't expect that tech to be as advanced as this. And I know they made that really goofy ice cube thing.
We saw in the initial Switch reveal that we would be able to play wirelessly and stuff like that, but I didn't expect the haptic feedback or the infrared stuff that's there. I thought it was like some really cool tech in those little Joy-Cons.
And it's legit. Like we held it, and it still doesn't make sense.
So
when
jealous
you
you guys got to play it.
The ice cubes falling in, you're like, what? Like when I first saw that, I was wondering what is this all about. But we can actually feel it. There's like some games in 1-2 Switch where it's legit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was overall happy with, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but just there was a diverse lineup of games that they talked about. I thought the third-party bit could have been shorter. Definitely some of the translation there, like when Suda got on stage, it seems like he was just off script, and it got really weird. And I felt bad for the interpreter there because you could almost feel the beads of sweat coming down his head through the translation.
I tweeted out during Suda's presentation, I was like, somebody get this guy a cup of coffee, because here's one of the most enigmatic and energetic men in all of gaming. And the interpreter's just like, well, we're gonna have a game.
So there was a NeoGAF thread about the Suda translator specifically that basically, I don't know if this was verified, but it basically said that he went totally off script and also made jokes that don't translate well.
It was
so he was like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, there was wrestling in jokes, it sounds like, where basically the American equivalent would have been, can you smell what Suda's cooking? Which at that point, I don't know that would have worked out so well. I mean, in the moment, would you be the guy trying to interpret, going, that's going to come into your head? Like I felt for that guy. All right, but I will say that
the question for the table: what do you guys think he was cooking, though?
No. But the thing I would say is that the thing that surprised me is that there were some dropped balls, some odd dropped information. Not talking about storage during the entire presentation. Like to me,
well, I mean, I think that is obviously sort of a point of contention. So for them to skirt that didn't really surprise me.
The expandable part of it, like that's the positive side of that message. Right? You say,
I don't know,
32 gigs, and you can buy your own little SD card up to any size today, whatever number of terabytes you got, and this thing can take it. And we learned that after the fact, but I think it would have been helpful there. But I agree with you. That's probably them skirting the issue. But then what about like not rounding up or basically your launch day lineup? Like just saying, hey, so on March 3rd, when Nintendo Switch comes out, this, other.
Yeah, and they only mentioned the price once, which was bizarre to me.
At the very beginning.
To not recap that.
Yeah.
Well, and then they also did that sneaky thing where they said, Australian purchasers, make sure you check with your retail.
It's like and it's like
it's like $470 or something.
Conversion hurts right
now.
It's
crazy.
It's pricey.
Yeah. Now, to Nintendo's credit, they got on social media the next day to clarify the stuff. They tweeted out information to try and basically fix it, but I was really surprised to see that. I was also really surprised to see from the audience a lot of the there was mixed feedback over whether or not it should have been on stage. Like you can tell that Japan calls the shots. FYI, Nintendo is run by a Japanese parent company, just so you know. So obviously Japan is going to want to be involved in making a message and making a statement about the next big thing, which for them was Nintendo Switch. And to their credit, the hardware showed really well. I thought, the opening was great. I thought the Koizumi bit was good.
Yeah.
But to then see the audience react and say, I would have preferred a direct. After years, I feel, of us saying it would be nice for Nintendo to be on stage again, just felt really weird to me.
Yeah. For their return to the stage and return to this like sort of live format, not sort of, I mean, it was a live presentation. I thought it was mostly jumbled. Like if you're asking for our overall impressions, I thought it was mostly a jumbled presentation. It was a very, very quirky, sort of very Japanese presentation that some things worked for me. Some things worked for me and some things
What you think?
didn't. But I will say that, and I was telling CJ this before we started, that regardless of the presentation in itself, I immediately pre-ordered a Switch as soon as I could, and it's the first console that I've ever purchased or had a pre-order for day one. So like I'm obviously very excited about it. There was a lot of things in the conference that got me really super stoked for it. Even though there were those lingering questions and even though there were some gaps that I felt like they should have.
I mean, the two of you can speak as producers as well. Like, you produce live shows, so obviously it's totally different what you see to what other people would see, because there's stuff that, like, I felt maybe dragged on for a little bit too long, but overall, I was fed so much new information that I was entertained the entire time.
No well, that's the thing that I also really liked about it was, for as secretive as Nintendo has been in the months leading up to this event, like you said at the outset of this conversation, it was just a huge information dump. Everything we could have asked for, well, not everything, but
Definitely
a lot of the stuff that we needed to know came right when we needed it to.
And at the very beginning, and that was smart for them to do right off the top.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the price out of the way, they got a bunch of release dates, but then you're wondering, okay, well, is that it? You're waiting for Zelda was, obviously the end, which was a nice climactic
went on
conclusion,
too long. The joke that went way too long was like, who's going to tell us?
Showing Miyamoto them in the beginning, it's like,
just let Aonuma say it.
I personally wish that Aonuma had jumped out from at least 3 or 4 different objects. Like, I liked him coming from behind the TV, but I would have liked to have seen him like coming out of a cake or like jumping up behind a sofa.
That's all I've ever
even
wanted
the
from
Great Fairy Fountain. Why not? Add it to the list.
Make it happen.
Why not? There it is. Overall though, I agree with you guys in that it was a sort of a presentation that had its highs and its lows. And overall though, I was still happy to see them do it. And I hope that I hope they do it again. I want to see them do it more often.
And I mean, I love that. Like, I love the idea that they have come back to this sort of format. And we got a direct the next week. Supposedly we're going to see more directs leading up to the Switch's release. And let's have a mix of the two. You know what I mean? Like for big things, like, the next time we see Mario, let's have a live event for it. Like, not necessarily have a Mario Odyssey Direct. Like, let's bring it out that way.
Or even, how are you going to approach E3 is my thing. Like, for me, my advice to them would be, ride this wave. Don't let 2 weeks pass without having something to say about Switch. A new bit of information, a new piece of knowledge. I feel like Pokemon really benefited from that this summer, just the build up to Pokemon Sun and Moon. But I just feel like it'll keep the conversation going. It'll keep stirring the pot. Eventually, you have to talk about online, and hopefully you have good things to say too with that, because I felt like I didn't hear those things that night, and that was a big bummer. Overall, like, that was the stuff that most people have been asking the most questions about was that. And just, you didn't set the table.
And Virtual Console, not mentioning that at all is crazy. But I also want to say that this conference, compared to some of the E3 conferences we get from Microsoft and Sony, at least they didn't play dubstep the whole time. They didn't have generic-looking shooters. Like, they really have their own personality.
And it showed. It absolutely showed. So then let us switch over to round 2.
How long do you think we can get away with doing that?
I think every podcast under the sun is going to just... Now, next topic. So this is the official gong on Nintendo Voice Chat.
Hey, that solves all of our transition problems.
I like it. That's a clear signal. You're just going to see me go, come on, stop talking.
Switch.
All right, but let's then switch to talking about actually playing Nintendo Switch. So CJ and I were in New York, and we got to go hands-on with this thing. You guys asked the questions. Well, sorry, I didn't come here to floss, my game. But I do want to tell you, how what. So you guys ask questions, because CJ and I can talk about this all day.
I guess my biggest thing is right out of the box. How does it feel to hold it? Do you feel like there's gonna be fatigue holding? Because like, it's a substantial tablet. I feel like one of those things where, you ever played an iPhone game in bed? Or something, or like you're looking at something, scrolling through your Facebook feed or something in bed, and your phone slips and you drop your phone on your face.
Yes.
Like, how bad is it going to hurt if you drop a Switch tablet on your face, for one?
Probably more than your phone,
right?
For sure.
So like, I mean, is it very heavy? Does it feel?
No, I mean, for the most part, like, it was tethered down in a lot of environments, so we didn't get a chance to lift it up too often. But for the one that we held backstage, it was actually surprisingly light, and the Joy-Cons as well, it's crazy light, almost to the point that they feel not too light, but it was almost, when you looked at it, the amount of weight that you were expecting to be, you're like, whoa, like it's really light.
Yeah, well, also you're just like a really strong dude.
Yeah, I mean, look at me, I'm huge. But it's one of those things where, you really don't realize how light they are. And so from fatigue standpoint, I don't think either separately or with the tablet it's going to be an issue. Like,
it definitely felt like
really
most of the weight is in the center, what they call the home console part, or what we call the tablet part.
Sure.
And so when you snap those Joy-Cons on, it makes the most satisfying
it feels so
sound.
That's awesome.
Every demo station I sat down, did you notice I was just like click, click,
Is
click,
that
click.
hard to do?
No, it's very easy. Just your index finger just naturally wraps around the back and you just grab it. I will say that grabbing the rest of the controller, maybe a little, depending on the size of your hands. Like I have very big hands, so it was adjusting my grip for that. But when you pick up the entire device in, I guess, handheld mode, portable mode, however you want to call it, the weight is mostly distributed to the center, but it feels even across the board. The Joy-Con are the lightest part. When you slide those two things off, they almost disappear in your hands for the most part. Like they hardly even feel like they're there. When you slide them into the grip, it's kind of like it's probably, I mean, this isn't the right dimensions, but it's probably as flat as this notebook I'm holding here.
So for those listening to the audio version, Jose is holding a very small notebook.
A moleskin. I don't know how many inches this is, but that is the sort of the portion. Then underneath you have these two hooks.
Okay.
And that controller looks uncomfortable, but it actually isn't.
You're talking about the Joy-Con grip?
The grip itself.
That
the one that
slides
looks
in.
like the puppy dog?
It's flat
when you
panel.
puppy dog mode, as
crazy.
they call it.
That's the technical term.
That's what we should. I own it, man. That thing looks like a dog.
It's weird.
Cross-eyed a little bit. But,
That was my second. That was my second question. Is that the way that the Joy-Con snap into that Joy-Con grip, the narrowness of it. Just looking at it looks like it would be really uncomfortable. So it's nice to hear that it doesn't feel like,
and it's not heavy, and it's flush, so it does look odd even when you're holding it. You're like, oh, and the way your fingers and hands rest on it, you'd think that it feels odd from looking at it, but it's good.
I was going to ask about that. When I was in Vegas for CES, I spoke to you about this a little, Jose. We hadn't seen a Switch in person yet, and I got to hold basically one of those crystal cases that would be an accessory. And I was trying so hard to analyze this piece of plastic to be like, how do I feel about this size? And I just felt like the biggest dork. But it did feel a little like my right thumb was slightly too low. Did you guys have that problem at all?
So I had that problem with the Joy-Cons because each Joy-Con has a different side. So when you're playing with it like this, you're going to have a preference for a left Joy-Con or a right Joy-Con depending on how it feels, because they both feel different. So within the controller, it's not an issue, but separately, I think it's
so.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because of the way the buttons are positioned on the actual.
You're talking about separately in terms of like one and one. Like when I have one and you.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So I think there's going to be camps. There's going to be the left camp and the right Joy-Con camp because it's very different.
Right.
I was talking to
it's mine.
I was talking to IGN's Andrew Goldfarb about this, and he was saying that he feels like player 2 will always be at an automatic distinct disadvantage because of the positioning of that right.
Yes.
I want to talk about that too because
it's so close to the
edge.
face button.
Yeah. Well. So first and foremost, like when the Joy-Con are attached to the portable tablet itself, I did feel like with any new controller, it's like, okay, where does my thumb go this time? And I feel like because I'm used to Wii U or even Xbox One or PS4, I play them all. It was just weird to reach down for the right analog stick for Zelda. And you'll notice we have a hands-on video where it runs for like 10 minutes. Every once in a while, I forget where it is. I'm like, oh, wait, that's right. It's down there. But I feel like that comes with any controller. Now, in terms of the Joy-Con and how they feel if you're left or right Joy-Con, I purposely asked for the right Joy-Con on Snipper Clips, which is a game that they demoed there. It's this
which looks awesome,
game.
by the way.
Yeah. It's my favorite game from the event, not called Zelda. Believe it or not. Because it's this fun puzzle game where you're basically cutting shapes out of each other. You're both made of paper, and you're trying to solve these different puzzles. And there's a variety of them. Some of them are you have to fit within an outline. Others are you have to move objects across the board, et cetera, et cetera. And I purposely asked for the right Joy-Con just for the purpose of trying it.
Yeah.
It felt fine. Once the wrist strap was on, the Joy-Con strap, I had no problem and didn't feel any way like sort of a, I don't know, just any cumbersome sort of element to it, despite the Joy-Con, the joystick itself being at the center of the controller. Now, that said, the one thing I didn't get to do that CJ did was you got to play Mario Kart battle mode or just a race.
The whole thing,
using a smaller Joy-Con. How did you feel, and did it have a wrist strap or did it not have a strap?
So I tried to purposely play it with both, and it definitely feels way better with a wrist strap. Because what happens when you look at the buttons on the joystick, and we actually have a really good walkthrough where Jose gets a nice good close-up of it, the buttons are almost inset because when it slides into the dock, I can't like hit it. And so trying to actually find them in that position where you're playing is super awkward because they're recessed. So you have to have your fingers really flush to the Joy-Con, and I didn't like it. But with the wrist strap, way better.
So wait, explain to me how having the wrist strap on changes the way you're holding the controller.
So it adds a certain amount of thickness basically to the vertical part of the controller. So imagine where the top horizon, like that line is, that now moves up a couple centimeters, and then the buttons themselves actually are further protruded out.
Protrude out.
Yeah. And so I feel like the Joy-Con strap was the answer to, man, these controllers are too small. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So you think that they essentially retconned and said that we need to add this peripheral basically to...
I mean, I think so. I think it's the reason why it comes with every Switch, to be honest. I mean, I think it is very much that if you had to play without it, I mean, you can, but it is way more comfortable with it. Even when you're holding them vertically and you have the strap on, you notice that it just has an extra layer of thickness that just feels much better in your hands. That said, some games use that, like the ones that we played, like holding vertically, that milking game in 1-2 Switch.
Oh my gosh.
It was just really weird because the buttons that they're asking you to push down, you're using your index finger and then you're using your ring finger, which is very unnatural. That was what they recommended, and so I tried it that way, and it felt really strange because you're like 1-2, 1-2.
How's that again, Jose?
That would be because that's the way that you actually milk cows.
It was really, really weird. It was the strangest demo I have ever had in my career.
It looks very odd. Back to the point of left and right. We know that you can buy extra controllers. How much is that? $80 for
we're
2 more Joy-Cons?
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask you, do we know if you can buy them separately?
Yes, you can. So they're $49.99 if you're getting an individual. They are $79.99. This is U.S. pricing, by the way. Apologies to our friends in Europe and Australia and all over the world. Nintendo Voice Chat is recorded in America, and so we go by America pricing.
It's crazy to me that anybody would just buy a left or a right control, like a left or a right Joy-Con, when for $30 more you get them both.
Well, I'm kind of thinking for kids, honestly.
I think it's parents. I think, Junior lost the left Joy-Con again. Time to go to the store. Like,
Junior's always doing that.
The kid needs to get it
And it was really weird because when we looked at the Joy-Cons, did you end up getting the, you pre-ordered, did you get just the gray? Or
I did get the gray. Yeah, because I felt like it came in waves. The first wave of pre-orders was standard, and then the second wave was the neon one. And I probably honestly would have ordered the neon one had it been available.
So I got the standard gray, and after seeing it at the event, I wish I would have got the colored ones because
it looks cool.
It looks cool, but it didn't translate, I feel like, live as well as it does when you're there actually seeing it in person. It looks really good.
Yeah, we had questions that were like, is it going to look just like unorganized and messy? But then seeing more photos of it, I'm like, damn,
it looks good.
Contrast is good.
And it's very easy to tell what side you're playing and like once you switch. Like that was the thing I think I appreciated the most. It wasn't like, oh wait, who's who? It's like, no, blue's over there, and red's over there, go.
Yeah. And do you see that on screen as well? Are they represented in blue and reds, first and second player?
I believe they're represented somehow. I just can't remember off the top of my head if that's it. But to me, it was just once you get into the rhythm of playing that game, you know what side is on that side versus like whether they represent it or not. Like that's a good point and a good question.
So the other configuration that I wanted to talk about is like one of the things that I know this is going to sound like a silly question, but like one of the things that I really loved about the Wii was when you're controlling with either side, the nunchuck and the Wii remote, the ability to like not necessarily playing a game with really heavy motion controls or something, just sort of sitting comfortably or casually and not holding a controller here like this. Would you ever play a Switch game docked with the controllers separated in your hand, or would you always plug them into the Joy-Con? Do you feel like you would hold those two just independently of any sort of grip?
I'll let you go first.
So I think yes, because to me, the issue with the current setup or with Wii or Wii U, however you want to say it, the nunchuck with cable was the issue.
Yes.
To me, like I was frustrated by the cable. So being able to...
Well, because CJ plays all his games like this.
Right. It's like hang out.
But that's being a really good point, because I sit with those two like really lazily next to me, and if there wasn't a cable, I would...
I also am very lazy and would like to sit like that
You will
as
like
well.
the Joy-Con.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think that's the main thing. Like it does feel comfortable. They do feel, like unique in your hand. But to me, the cable comfortable free thing is the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I've got to experiment a little more, and I say that because my hands are so big, and I wonder if without the wrist strap that would be uncomfortable, like just having a controller that maybe is sort of too small. Because for example, I want to play Zelda that way when it comes in, just go full Koizumi like on the couch.
Yeah, like, that's so good.
Jose's gonna mount his TV on the ceiling.
Just
wonder
lean
if that
back.
translated over.
Just let it happen.
To get away from the Joy-Cons really quickly, I was going to ask, did you guys get to mess with multi-touch?
That actually
that's another interesting reason. That was one of the other things we didn't know if it was going to be in the press conference. And we're like, why not? Like, are you talking on the tablet?
I meant to bring that up.
Why wasn't it mentioned at all during the conference? We were like, hey,
not a single diagram.
It's touchscreen. Yeah,
like shows a finger on that thing, and I'm like, what was that about?
But you guys, in playing on the tablet itself, you did.
Yeah, we did. So in Skylanders Imaginators, I did. Overall, the responsiveness was fine, but sometimes it was weird.
That's a weird game to have touch.
Well, for the menus. So if
Just
you're
menus,
if you're cycling through menus, that was the one. There was not a game that I saw there that I can think of off the top of my head where actually I did tap the screen in Mario Kart Deluxe to make a selection, I believe.
Gotcha.
So it's mostly for UI stuff.
That's the thing, and I don't think they had a game to show, which is why not a single finger came near that
makes
screen.
sense.
Well, I can't imagine they would integrate it much further than that, because if you're plugging it into your TV, if you're plugging it into the dock, you're taking all that interface away anyway. So it's like,
I guess
it doesn't make sense to spend that money to build those resources into something touchscreen like that.
I'm just thinking about it in terms of like iPhone and iPad games.
Yeah.
You can both get third-party accessories that give you a controller for those or touch. You know, like GTA is a really good example of that. So there's options for it, and I was just wondering if they would use those. But it's a good point that I don't think I would use it even if I had the option when the console automatically comes with controllers anyway.
But we've been talking about this for the past year on MVC, where it's like, what do you do with games like Animal Crossing or Mario Maker that very much the current iterations of those games are quite good and dependent on stylus or on just
Mario
touch
Maker
interaction.
especially, like you can't
I don't think it would be as elegant or as easy to use if you did that. So I'm a little concerned.
Not to mention too, I mean, with kids, I have a few kids. They're quite old. As
How many kids you have these
As
days?
you can see, I have 3 right now, and I'm an old. For all those of you listening, I'm a super old guy. And I will say that the current generation of kids just naturally touches the screen. So to not have that as a touchscreen, I think would have been, a misstep. But again, I feel like they were stepping away from the Wii U a little bit, not showcasing that, going, hey, totally different.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Because Wii U is very focused on touch.
Sure.
So I've got a question from one of our listeners who emailed this into nvc@ign.com, and he says, first of all, thank you. You loved IGN's Nintendo coverage. After the Ice Cube demo and 1-2 Switch, I feel like a lot of folks are writing HD Rumble off as a gimmick, but I'd like to hear more. I'm especially interested to hear how it worked in more core-centric games. So that's a great question, Zach, and it's not this Zach, but another Zach.
But I do see you spell your name with a CH, which is the right way.
Yeah. Zach's very happy about that. I will say that none of the core games we played, to my knowledge, and it was never pointed out, were really using the HD Rumble. The only game that CJ and I played was 1-2 Switch, and it had so I've heard of 2 games that do this, but we only played one of them. There's a game called Ball Count, and basically there is 2 boxes shown on screen, and the controller you're supposed to hold in your hand sort of horizontally like this, and you're basically tilting it back and forth to try and count how many spheres are inside of that box. And so it's interesting because that sounds so silly, and yet when we used it, like you honestly feel something is sliding around in there.
That's super impressive.
And the way it sort of goes across your hand just hits to a stop.
Like your tongue, Zach.
It's interesting. I'm trying real hard to navigate this conversation in a PG-13 way, Zach. Do not mess this up for me.
If you count 3, you win.
CJ,
great.
I know.
Me.
Yeah,
Save
exactly. I will say this. I was super skeptical with that, Rumble HD. What is it? Is it Rumble HD?
No, they just call it HD Rumble. Yeah.
So when the ice cubes are going in, first of all, like what was happening? That was the main question during that demo. It's like, what are they showcasing?
It's so hard to demo that.
It was hard to actually demonstrate what they were talking about. What's the name of the game? Yeah. Let's call it Marbles in a Box.
Sure.
Ball count is
there
fine.
You go. Ball count. Okay.
It's fine.
Sounds good.
Just watch where
I'm
you
just
take
gonna
it.
say marbles. So, and I watched a few people do it before I actually jumped in with Jose. And it is odd because, A, you're skeptical going in. Bite your tongue, Zach. You're skeptical going in. And as you do it, I looked away from the screen because I didn't want
Like how I'm the youngest person here and I'm very interested in this tech. I'm like,
no, I'm fine too.
Yeah,
I'm
but
fine.
it is crazy because as you are doing it, you can feel the motion. You know how you're trying. Oh my goodness! All I'm gonna say is this: as you do it with an iPad, you have an iPad in your hand, and you can see something visual. It's amazing as you look away from the screen. There's no way to say that you feel marbles in a box. I mean, you guys are terrible. There's no good way to say this.
So
long story short, it works. Okay? And I guessed 2 marbles, and that was accurate. And the other person I watched guessed 4 marbles, and she got it.
And that was
Hey, the other person was me, and I said 3.
And you said
right.
3.
You said 2. No, but the other game I heard about, there's one that you're breaking into a safe, and you hold the controller, and you're basically tilting, and you're feeling one that is distinctly different than the rest.
Awesome.
That's another example of the HC Rumble thing that we heard about.
I mean, I mentioned it before, but no part of me thought that this was gimmicky when it was on screen. I was like, this is really impressive tech for something so small.
But I felt like the emphasis on it took away from the fact that for the first time, a Nintendo device has a capable, capacitive, multi-touch screen.
Yeah.
And for the first time, Nintendo, the company that helped make touch gaming a thing that was popular, right? Before smartphones came along, to see them just like go, whoop, nope, Joy-Cons are more important, really struck me as odd.
That is true, but I guess the Joy-Cons are impressive and they're trying to sell them. So they do a lot of strange.
Well, not only that, but I think it is somewhat attributed to the fact that there is such impressive tech in these little tiny boxes. You know what I mean? Like I think that touch screen is or multi-touch is something that we are all so familiar with that they would probably rather highlight the haptic feedback inside.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention, the Xbox One controller has trigger feedback.
Yes.
It doesn't work for that many games, but the ones it does, like Forza Horizon 3, I love it.
Right.
It's so noticeable when you're playing a racing game to get that feedback, and I think maybe it would be really hard to express if you hadn't already tried it. It looked weird with the ice demo. Like, I can't really imagine what it's like, even from you guys talking about your dumb marble women. But
well, the ice demo specifically, I feel like as true as probably to what the demo was meant to sort of convey.
Yeah.
When he's talking about you feel liquid filling the glass, well, I mean, does the controller get heavier? Like, what are you saying there? And so I felt like that's where it went awry. I felt like when he was talking about just 3 different objects moving around inside of a glass, 3 ice cubes, that's a different expectation, and you kind of understand that a little better. Just a general note that I thought about later where I was like, why did that seem weird? And that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
super interesting.
So, switching on, we're going to talk about the launch day recap. So Nintendo has sort of painted the picture finally, what's going to be available at launch. And we're going to share our thoughts on this because this is a different strategy for the company. So there are 5 games on launch day, March 3rd, which is very unusual.
Not that many games.
For any platform that launches. So we have Zelda Breath of the Wild, 1-2 Switch, Super Bomberman R, Skylanders Imaginators, and Just Dance 2017. Now, also in March, there are 6 games.
And one of them is Shovel Knight.
One of them is Shovel Knight. One of them is Fast Remix, which is Fast Racing Neo, but on Switch. I Am Setsuna Snipper Clips, which is, again, the best game on Switch that was not named Zelda at that event. I swear to you. Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus. Sorry about that. And Has Been Heroes.
Okay.
For comparison, Wii, when it launched in November 14, 2006, launched with 21 games. Wii U launched with 32 games. That was in 2012.
Wow.
Yep. And 3DS, another point of comparison, which launched in March 2011, launched with 18 games. But I just want to point out the first party lineup then because it was not good. It was Nintendogs, Pilot Wings, and I believe Steel Diver.
Steel Diver, yeah.
So let's talk about this. I mean, how do we feel about this launch lineup? And what are you motivated? What do you think this is a symptom of?
Regardless of however many games it launches with, the most important thing here is that it launches with Zelda.
Yes.
I think that's the reason I pre-ordered. That's the reason that probably CJ pre-ordered. I mean, A, we've been waiting for Breath of the Wild for so long, and it's finally here. And B, the fact that it launches, like, that's at least a solid month or more of something that I want to play every day, probably, So that for me is a no-brainer. And then by the time I'm through with Zelda, there's a few other games that are going to be out, maybe later in March that I can pick up. Snipper Clips, Shovel Knight, things like that.
To offer a totally different perspective, I did not pre-order. I feel like I'm one of the only people in the office.
I didn't either, actually.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I have not.
I'm not going to get one on launch. I'm going to play Zelda on Wii U, and this is in part, I don't earn a ton of money. I don't have several $100s to just spend on a new console. Maybe I would.
Preach. Keep going.
Maybe I would if there were a 32 game lineup, and that is totally a factor. But Zelda being on Wii U means that that's not a thing for me. But I feel like Mario probably will be.
Yeah, for me,
but I'm the
it's
same
also
with Xbox
just
One and PS4. I wouldn't have bought those on launch either. Like,
and that's a sentiment that I've heard a lot around the Switch's launch. That if Zelda is coming to Wii U, save the $300, play it on Wii U, and then wait until there's more titles later in the year.
And part of me wants to wait for a price drop, but I mean, the Wii U didn't really have a price drop, but then I don't feel right comparing it to Wii U because 3DS has had a price drop. Most recently, you could get a new 3DS for $99. That's insane. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do eventually get a price drop for a more handheld device.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not maybe the best test scenario for, well, why didn't you pre-order? I mean, I work in this. Like, I feel like I'm going to have one in the office.
Literally your
playing
job.
It. Yeah, I felt like I don't have to have this yet, but I will buy it eventually. But I did feel like, man, this launch lineup's a little thin. What I do appreciate about it and what I do like about it is that there is variety to it. 1-2 Switch is obviously the casual play. Super Bomberman is the classic play. Yeah. Skylanders Imaginators is the kid play. Just Dance is the Just Dance play. And believe it or not, that game is very successful with certain audiences. And so I felt like overall you got that part of it right, but you are setting up this situation where folks are examining it. And there's this level of over-examination on Switch software in general and Nintendo software in general that I've never seen before, given that March has several games sort of that can show up at any time. Granted, Snipper Clips is the one I like the most. I Am Setsuna came out last year. Fast Racing showed up so late in the Wii U's lifespan that hopefully the audience that should have played that game is going to be there to play that game. But then you have things like Shovel Knight, which are classic quality games, but they're available on so many platforms
already.
Yeah, so I also, I'm not sure if everyone else feels the same way, but I don't really care if the Switch doesn't have a ton of third-party support personally. I look at it as, especially if we get all the virtual console support that we're hoping that we'll get, which I'm again hoping will come with the paid online service. If it acts as a portable device that is like a portal into the last 20 years of my life playing games, I'm sold.
And I think that's the part of the thing that we're not talking about too. Like, we don't know on March 3rd how many are virtual console games.
Exactly.
How many things show up from different
so frustrating
games. Yeah, and that could add to this list, even if they are games you've already owned. But I agree with you, right? This is the portable device that represents a major part of your gaming history for some of us that grew up with Nintendo. And just to paint this picture a little further, they have outlined that April 28th you're getting Mario Kart 8, ARMS is in spring, Puyo Puyo Tetris is in spring if you're into that, Rhyme, Disgaea 5 Complete, Splatoon is this summer, Splatoon 2, I cannot wait to play that game. Played it briefly, really enjoyed what I played. And then you have other stuff sort of in the air like Ultra Street Fighter, which is also a very conscious play for that legacy era Street Fighter 2, one of the biggest arcade games of its time. So I feel like the varieties here, I'm just kind of sick of the overanalysis.
There's a little something for everybody.
And I just worry that, like, hey guys, like, you can't lambaste this system for not having a FIFA or a major sports game at launch, because guess what? Those come out in the fall. And if you launch with that in March, most of those games aren't even announced in March.
It's true.
NBA 2K being that example. FIFA 18. Also, it was weird they didn't put a number on FIFA. They should have just said 18. They didn't. I don't know who that fell on. And then you're going to have more games over the course of the year, but I think the software situation on Switch is being a little like talked about to the point of exasperation here. And at the same time, I'm not saying that they're completely in the clear. I think E3 needs to now paint the picture that the next Call of Duty and certain major brands are going to be on Switch. For example, if Nintendo misses the next major Star Wars game, to me, that's a miss. I think that Star Wars is a brand that this holiday, everyone is going to be talking about it, because guess what comes out?
From a business perspective, you're absolutely right. From a personal perspective, I just want GameCube games. I just want the game. Like, that's all I really want. Like, just give me Virtual Console. Like, that's it. But you are right. And like having a Call of Duty, even if it's like, a different version like on the DS, is hugely valuable because it's a name that everyone knows. And if they know they can get it on a Switch as well, it definitely helps with business. But I'm not going to buy it there.
The longevity of the console. Like, it needs to have those third parties for that reason. But 1-2 Switch is another piece of that puzzle. I think it's weird that it's not, I mean, that's a conversation that maybe different topic, but to actually not include that into the actual bundle at that price, to me, that was a big piece of the puzzle too, because
it's true.
It's what they're selling. Like, the Joy-Cons are that game.
I mean, it is Wii Sports
version.
Exactly. And it's also, that's...
Or the Switch,
Wii Sports meets Wario.
And
I wish that they had just called it WarioWare. I wish that they had just rebranded
Mario Switch.
A big part of the Wii's success is obviously that people who aren't necessarily huge gamers bought into it because the system really appealed to them, even for Wii Sports. And I think 1-2 Switch is the thing I can sell to my mom as someone who plays iPad games all the time. That's the thing that she would buy and play with her friends who don't necessarily play any other video game. So it does seem bizarre to not really, really push that as the must-have game.
Yeah, especially when you've had so much success with pack-in titles in the past. Yeah. Wii Sports being the one that no one will forget.
Isn't it the highest-selling game of all time?
One of,
I'm pretty sure it is. It's definitely in the top 10.
And then you have Nintendo's legacy of like Mario 64, and you've had so many others that you're just like, yep, these were valuable and important, and they help set sort of the tone for what this console is. And I don't know. I'm just tired of seeing the who is this platform for, because my interpretation so far is it sits in between the tablet audience and the console audience. And the tablet kids who want to come up and play something that either is Nintendo or is sort of I feel like Nintendo is very good at being inclusive with their games.
Sure.
Like you can not play games and pick up some Nintendo titles and be like, holy cow, this is a great experience. And then you've got the other side of the coin, which is the pro kids, everyone who's on their higher end platforms, whether it's PC, PlayStation, or Xbox, who like Nintendo franchises and are willing to come down to play it. But I don't see it as the only device you should own.
No, totally.
Yeah, and I don't think it's being positioned that way either.
No, and I mean, it could just be them being incredibly future-proof where, Xbox and PlayStation don't have a device to compete with, as you were saying, CJ, how much kids love touchscreens. And maybe this is them just thinking ahead and being like, the next generation of kids want this to game on. Let's fulfill that. And we're not thinking about it that way, because it, to me, is always going to be the thing that I take on planes or the thing that I play outside of a TV.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I think it's really interesting. I've had several conversations just around the office, and the disparity in the way that people will be using the Switch is pretty wide.
Yeah.
Like, personally, I don't think that I will use the Switch in its portable version much outside of like a long plane ride or something like that, like taking it on a work trip or something. If I'm in San Francisco, if I'm at home, that's going to be a home console for me. But talking to somebody like Goldfarb, he's like, I will only use this as a portable device.
I feel more like he does.
I only ever want to play this as a handheld device, so.
And that was a question that we asked people at each of the different venues from New York to Japan to whatever. And the overwhelming reception was that people are planning to use this for a portable device. Yeah. So it's weird.
Really?
Like, a lot of people are saying
I would have imagined that it would have been
a lot of replies
split.
for me. Like personally, when I was talking to them, like, I'm all about going on the go, and I want to make sure if I'm playing at home, I can take it with me. Yeah. All that stuff. So,
Fun fact, everyone in that video, everyone who we asked, who this is going to be part of a video that'll show up on IGN in Japan, talked about Splatoon. Like every single one.
Really?
They were like, Splatoon 2,
Japan loves Splatoon.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Like it is just
really cool.
on fire over there. And I think that's really cool for them overall. And we got to play it and it did feel really good. But
you got to play Splatoon 2?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, right on. I didn't know that.
And there were, this is another weird case where I was like, I kind of wish this would have demoed a little better, because it wasn't that it was a bad demo. I do like that. So they had 4 weapons you can choose from. There was a basic, like the charge shot and how that's changed. Now you can like hold a charge and then like swim away and come up and fire on someone. You don't have to like charge up in the moment. They had the splat roller, which has had some tweaks. So now it's not this overwhelming like shotgun blast that just like when people would jump up and just fire like a beam, like pew, and you just see a volley of paint and you were done. Now, whenever someone jumps with that, they turn the character turns the roller vertical and they just fire a straight line.
Oh, cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
There were a lot of smart tweaks. The splat dualies, which was like these two like almost machine gun like weapons that you can basically, now you have a roll move that you can like roll out of the way on someone, and if you aim and position perfectly, when you come up, you fire a stronger blast, so you take
that's
them out
awesome.
quicker. Yeah. I got to play it on the Pro controller, which by the way feels really good on the system. It has a motion sensor in it now.
Nice.
And in an odd twist, Splatoon on Wii U, I swear you were not allowed to use the direction on the camera to turn on the right stick. And maybe I'm misremembering. You can use everything on this controller. Like you can use the motion to turn, or you can use the stick to turn. Everything was switched on. I'm sure there are ways to sort of customize that experience. But I think the thing that hurt that demo, and the reason I'm seeing a lot of people saying this doesn't feel like an upgrade, is that you had them play Turf Wars, Turf Wars is a mode that was in the last game, and that's the equivalent of telling you, just play a deathmatch at this Halo 6 demo.
Yeah.
It's not something new and exciting, and maybe they were scared of teaching people the rules again for Splatoon, but I feel like that was part of the reason why you didn't see everything about why is this a sequel. And I also think part of the expectation folks had coming in was this is a port, and it's not. Like
I completely thought it was a port until the conference.
It didn't look dramatically different graphics-wise either, which I don't care about.
Yeah,
but
Zelda doesn't either. But I think with Zelda, no one seems to care.
Yeah, well, I felt like Zelda did look more different than Splatoon, but I don't think that's a problem, but I do think it raised a lot of questions. Immediately, I was like, oh, Splatoon port, like for sure.
Totally. All right, then last thing on this topic before we move on is that I think the other barrier for them in terms of kind of getting this audience, though, is this expensive ecosystem that folks are going to be swimming into. So I brought some examples here just to kind of set the table. We're not going to read every price, but I just want to set these examples up for you guys. And reminder, these are all U.S. prices. This is not taking into account international. Sorry, Australia, you pay a lot for stuff, for video game stuff. So a Pro Controller is $70, $69.99. Joy-Con charging grip is $29.99. Now, fun fact: the charging grip, the Joy-Con grip that comes in your Nintendo Switch set does not charge your Joy-Con. The only way to do that is to buy a $30 accessory that will allow you to charge them. There is no USB at the top of that device. It's rough. They will charge if you leave them in the dock, though, when you're not playing. Okay. That's, of course, a
20 hours, they said,
to be thinking about.
Battery life, so it's good.
Here's what I see as an essential set of Joy-Con have 20 hours.
That's impressive.
About
that's awesome.
20
I
hours
missed that.
charge each. Yeah, which is really cool. Here's essential accessories that I'm just like, man, this is going to cost a lot. If you want a pair of Joy-Con, so you can have 4 players in the house, and an extra Switch dock so you can go to any TV in the house, that's a $90 and an $80 purchase. You're paying $169.98 for the ability to have 4 people play at home and be able to switch TVs if you had to.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Joy-Con, pair of Joy-Con, let's say you want an extra Switch dock, a pair of Joy-Con, and Joy-Con charging grip, which again, this I feel falls into the essential category because you might want your extra pair, you want a way to charge, and you want another Switch dock in the house. That's $200.
Yeah. That's crazy.
A lot. Yeah. I just worry that
on the flip side, the Pro Controller being $70 is cheaper than I think you can currently get a DualShock or an Xbox One controller for right now.
I'd have to double check.
I'm pretty sure it is. I think they're around
the same.
I think they're either around the same. I know when you get into the
Australian prices.
I think a DualShock 4 is $59.99.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask a question. So, going into pre-ordering and stuff, I sort of just assumed that I was going to get a Pro Controller. But given how comfortable you're saying the grip is with the Joy-Con and also the ability to play Sans grip, how imperative is it to buy a Pro Controller day one? I mean,
I think a lot of the people who are doing competitive stuff will just want that, but I don't know. I don't personally feel like I would need a Pro Controller based on being able to slide.
The competitive scene, especially like if we see Smash Bros, they're going to want GameCube controllers.
Well, that too.
We have no idea if there's an adapter for that.
No, we got to find out. Or if there are Joy-Con configuration that has more of a GameCube.
Dare I say it? Wavebird 2.
Wow, yeah.
Good point.
I think it depends on your needs. The one benefit of getting the Pro Controller to me, outside of it's a bit more comfortable to hold, right, for long
yes,
because it is basically a regular shaped
Zelda.
controller. For Zelda, or I definitely didn't get to play Switch long enough to say, oh, I've been playing for an hour and this is how my hands feel. I can't tell you that, but I can say that what have you done? But I can say that the Pro Controller to me felt really good, and you're getting bigger face buttons.
I saw more than one person on Twitter say that the Pro Controller is their favorite controller amongst Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo.
It felt
now.
really solid. I'm not gonna lie. It's just a case of why the extra 10. I don't know what is really kind of causing that. Oh, I think through the Pro Controller you can scan Amiibo through that too. Just putting that out there.
That's
cool.
a good thing to have.
There's an NFC reader inside of it.
So you don't have to take
cool.
off your Joy-Con and then do all that stuff.
So if you factor that tech into the Joy-Con pricing, NFC, and then there's a sensor, and then there's all that other stuff.
It kind of makes a little more sense.
It kind of makes a little more sense why there's a cost for them, but it's still very pricey.
It's still really
it's not
expensive,
cheap.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's switch to we're going to talk about Fire Emblem. So this week, Nintendo had a Fire Emblem Direct where they revealed some big surprises to us, some stuff that we didn't see coming, some stuff that we did. So let's talk about those announcements. So we had, first and foremost, the biggest one is that a Fire Emblem game is coming to Nintendo Switch in 2018. They just straight up announced a game. Working title. They're not saying too much. They didn't show assets for it, but just the commitment that Fire Emblem is going to be on Nintendo Switch next year.
First console version of Fire Emblem since 2006 or 8.
It's been a while. It has been a while. Yeah, absolutely.
super exciting to me. I love the console iteration of Fire Emblem, and I missed Fates, but I did play Awakening, so I'll be excited to play it on the Switch.
Yep. So then we had an announcement for, and I'll put these all together, and then we can just go through one by one, right? But Fire Emblem Echoes Shadow of Valentia was announced for 3DS. This is coming out in May. This is a game inspired by the 1992 Fire Emblem Gaiden, which was only released on Super Famicom. We don't know that game. They also talked about an Amiibo 2-pack that's going to come out as well. Fun fact, Fire Emblem has 7 Amiibo so far. If you
They're all pretty damn good-looking Amiibo, too.
Yeah.
They are, yeah. The Smash series had several because there are so many Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers, yeah.
So you have Fire Emblem Warriors, which, surprise, we knew it was coming to Switch, but now it's also coming to new 3DS. Dun, dun, dun. And then they talked about...
That makes sense. I mean, Hyrule Warriors came to both.
True, but I didn't expect a Switch and a new 3D. Specifically, they called out new 3DS. Old 3DS, you're not getting Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah.
Wasn't Hyrule Warriors exclusive to new 3DS?
No, it
should have been because it run really crummy on regular 3DS.
Very crummy indeed on the regular 3DS. And then they talked about Fire Emblem Heroes. It felt like after watching this direct, this is Nintendo being very committed to continuing to push Fire Emblem, which had a renaissance on 3DS, to be fair.
It's funny because they were talking about not that long ago about it potentially being canceled. They were going to cancel all Fire Emblem games.
With Awakening, Awakening not done well?
Done well, and it did. So they were like, well, all right, I guess we go hard now.
Yeah.
All games, here you go. Like it was totally out of the blue. I didn't expect that. But I'm looking forward to the mobile game as well. And I wonder if there'll be tie-ins between different versions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good question to ask, but with Heroes, especially, like, this is a free-to-play Fire Emblem game. It's, sort of Nintendo and DNA once again working on this thing. I'm sure Intelligent Systems is somewhere in there. But for folks at home, DNA worked on Record Keeper, which you can play right now, and it is a similar style game in terms of that it has a gacha
game
mechanic
that I've watched Justin Davis sink dozens, if not hundreds of hours into. Yeah, he swears by Record Keeper. So I'm totally on board with that idea. And I think the thing that most attracted me to Fire Emblem Heroes is that they describe the battles as sort of bite-sized. That's one of the things that I really loved about Awakening is these like really long, tense battles. But I play mobile games when I'm on the bus. And so the idea that I can play a strategy game in these sort of 3 to 5 minute bursts, I think is really, really cool.
And it's all confined to one window too. Like, you're not scrolling around this map. Like, you're just sort of making it happen within the content of one screen. And it's held vertically. Like, I was expecting
I was totally expecting it to be horizontal.
Yeah, it's 100%. Nope, one hand on the train, just tap it away on my Fire Emblem. Upgrading my army. I mean, so I'm taking this as far as I can go.
Sure.
What did you guys enjoy the direct overall? Do you think this is a smart move for them? Just out of curiosity.
I'm interested, kind of to Alanah's point, I'm interested in how hard Nintendo is leaning into Fire Emblem. I think it's very clear that between Awakening and all 3 versions of Fates, that this has become one of their flagship series, and I think it's really, really awesome that they are building up not necessarily a new IP, but really leaning into Fire Emblem as like the next pillar of a Nintendo franchise. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, I think Heroes, just like kind of Pokemon Go and Super Mario Run is intended to draw outside audiences with the mobile version into potentially buying the other versions. And I think for people who aren't familiar with Fire Emblem, seeing that there are 4 separate games is kind of scary. So they're like, which one of these do I buy? What makes them all different? But I mean, they kind of went over that with the last games that released anyway. So I don't know. I'll be very interested to see how many people jump over to the console versions after playing it on mobile.
Yeah, no, totally. And even this month, right, we'll get MPDs for December and find out if Mario benefited from the synergy of having Mario Run out at the same time. Did, the Nintendo 3DS and Mario games in general get a bumper night, bumper not? I will say this. This is a good question.
Bumper night is my favorite mobile game.
Bumper night, new thing. I'm just going to snap my fingers every time I'm like, move on. We got an email from Jeremy who said, hey, so hello MVC crew. Today, Nintendo held the Fire Emblem Direct, announced several titles. And he says, personally, I feel that Nintendo and perhaps those at Intelligent Systems as well are building too much on the recent success of Awakening. And it certainly shows. He felt like some of the design decisions, in Fates, he wasn't a big fan of how children were implemented, for example, in Fates, whereas in Awakening, there was very sort of smart and specific way that came about. But then he points out, and let's go over this, right? right? We had Awakening in 2013. We had Fates in 2016. Now we have Shadows of Valentia in 2017. A Switch game in 2018, assuming it doesn't get delayed. We had Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which counts as a Fire Emblem-like game. It was a spin-off with those games, 2016 on the console side. Fire Emblem Heroes, which is coming out February 2nd on iOS and Android. And then you have Warriors 2, which is a 2017 game. So his point, what about Advance Wars? Like, why go all in on Fire Emblem?
That's the thing that really bummed me out. Like, I like Fire Emblem. Yeah. I love Advance Wars, and I really wished that they would have. I think I tweeted about this too. I was really hoping to see something about Advance Wars coming back, but it seems like Fire Emblem is their strategy game of choice moving forward, and that's something we're all gonna have to learn.
People are really attached to those characters as well. I really think it is going to be a huge marketing problem that they're going to have.
Okay, but taking a look at this list, right? So you've got a Fire Emblem for each audience that would want a Fire Emblem, right?
That's true.
Shadows of Valentia is for the people that played Fates to death and need something
on
more
3DS.
on 3DS, right? Yeah. Nintendo Switch, the Fire Emblem for Switch is a completely new crowd, or for fans that own both platforms. And then you've got you've got Warriors, which is sort of a non sequitur for that franchise. I think that's for diehard fans, right? And then Fire Emblem Heroes is for people that mostly play mobile. So I think that they're spreading the wealth amongst their different platforms, and I would assume like this is probably the last we'll hear of Fire Emblem for a while. I don't think that they're going to lean into an annual release of Fire Emblem in that way. Like,
no, I gotta agree with you there, and I do feel like that it is smart to target as many different people as you can, and to sort of put all this faith behind a strategy RPG in 2017.
Exactly.
You don't really see that genre getting pushed that hard.
Yeah.
True.
I feel like before and around the same time that Fire Emblem hit this renaissance period with Awakening, I felt like the only other game I had seen that got pushed that hard was XCOM.
That's what I was going to say. XCOM, 100%.
Yeah, the strategy RPG that you were like, or strategy game, and you were like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, 2K is serious about this one and making sure that it does well. And on console, the first time around, they absolutely committed everything they could to pushing it. It eventually ended up on mobile devices as well, at least in tablet form. Whereas with XCOM 2, that push diminished. It was PC first, and then on console, it felt like, well, you just woke up one day and it came out. There wasn't a huge marketing push for that.
Take a look back at an IGN piece called "Why XCOM 2 Can Only Exist on PC." If you,
it
did say something like that.
That was no. It was a IGN first piece, but that it doesn't matter. But that's a really funny thing.
Sure, if it was going to come out or not.
So I haven't said much. Obviously, I have not played. Jose and I chatted in advance about this franchise, but what I will say is that them being involved in Smash Brothers and me having many children has been established.
Just 3, CJ.
Just 3, but they're playing lots of games. They do like the genesis of where these characters come from. Sure. So like I'll be buying it probably on mobile as well as DS and everywhere else. So
totally,
we'll be in it for that.
And I will say though, I do hope that after this, to Zach's point, they do take a break. And I think Advance Wars needs that renaissance. Like it's time.
I don't think
had enough time.
We've never seen Nintendo annualize a series. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I don't see it happening.
It's typically one release per mega franchise for each console every generation. And so this is it for Fire Emblem, it looks like to me. Like if there's one smashing Fire Emblem success on the Switch and one on 3DS this gen and one on mobile, then that's probably
good.
Yeah, I think the only exceptions to that were in fact Mario, because at one point there were too many Mario games. It just felt like New Super Mario Bros. 2.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But then they took a break. To your point, with Zelda, we haven't seen that yet. I'm hoping after Breath of the Wild, they just kind of drop the mic, fade back, go work on a Pikmin game or an F-Zero game, or hey, a Metroid game.
Yeah, where's that Pikmin game?
Everyone wants Metroid, man.
Like badly, please.
How dare you?
Just saying.
You don't want a Metroid game?
You don't want a Metroid game?
No. I said everyone wants Metroid.
Oh,
okay.
Yes, I want
Metroid. I thought you were dismayed.
No. I'm like, I agree. Everyone wants Metroid.
Okay, very good.
I rescind that saltiness.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's our show. And man, we went through a ton of information. Thank you so much, CJ, Zach, and Alanah. Where can they find you on Twitter? CJ.
Gibson Films on Twitter.
Zach.
At Zacharias D.
And Alanah?
I am at Char-Alanahzad.
All right, and you can find me, Jose_Otero on Twitter. Really quickly, just want to point out, thank you for watching Nintendo Voice Chat. This is a weekly show that you can always find right here on YouTube or on IGN.com. And really, just leave us feedback. Let us know what you think. We're always eager to hear what you have to say. And we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.